Welcome to World Health News, the most credible source of world health news around the world. I am Dr. Yavuz Salay, physician, entrepreneur, and venture architect. I have very interesting world health news that I want to share with our viewers in Africa. Our first news is about financial literacy. Do you know that financial literacy empowers aging population around the world, including in Japan? Our second news is about alcohol. And I don't know if there are any communities around you, but Alcoholics Anonymous found to be very effective for achieving alcohol abstinence and getting rid of alcohol. Our third news is about climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change and urbanization expected to cause an increase in groundwater organic carbon, which is a huge problem. Our fourth news is about improving the quality and availability of critical birth and death data. And our final news is about vaccination. The routine childhood vaccination linked to long-term schooling attainment among adults around the world, including in India. Let's get to our first interesting news. Do you know that financial literacy empowers aging population in Japan? People with an understanding of basic finances are likely to be aware of existing legal and social services for people with dementia, according to a study of Japan's aging population. More than 8 million people, about 6% of Japan's population, have either dementia or mild cognitive impairment. Japan has felt economic impacts at the national level as people with dementia participate less in daily economic activities, such as going to the store or paying bills. To better understand the needs and behaviors of aging populations, researchers from Hiroshima University and Kyoto Prefectural University of Medicine, led by Professor Yoshihiko Kadoya and Professor Jin Narumoto, analyzed data from the nationwide survey on the economic status of the Japanese elderly. So, ladies and gentlemen, the two main systems they studied were adult guardianship and civil trust. Adult guardianship is the authority given to an adult guardian by the court to make decisions for a person who is incapable of making their own decisions. In the civil trust system, a person instructs financial institutions to take care of their assets. Their research shows that financial literacy not only makes people handle money issues better, but also makes them aware of potential problems that could emerge in old age. So Kadoya said that the research was very interesting and recently published in the Journal of Women and Aging. So financial literacy is found to be the most influential factor affecting knowledge about these two systems, irrespective of gender, age, education, and economic status. Kadoya notes the stories of people with dementia who have died thinking they had little or no money, but people later discover they had millions of yen tucked away in their home. Social services like adult guardianship and civil trust are designed to prevent those types of situations and help an aging population continue to carry on their economic activities. He adds that these types of systems can be challenging to navigate, as courts often find it very difficult to appoint guardians or institutions when family and friends do not agree to take on their responsibility. Therefore, these systems are not often used due to detailed legal procedures and a general lack of awareness. Still, a person's awareness of these services can help them appoint a legal guardian in advance of their cognitive decline, which could help minimize the misuse of power and prevent unnecessary legal procedures, in addition to implications for aging populations and caregivers. The findings are also useful for those who develop policy related to adult guardianship and civic trust. Policymakers should emphasize financial literacy and conduct a targeted promotion effort to help people with dementia so they can continue to participate in and benefit from the economic activities. Professor Yoshihiko Kadoya, Hiroshima University. I really want to thank him because this study does not include anyone who is currently suffering from dementia or cognitive impairment, but really helps and sheds light into the situation. So, ladies and gentlemen, our second news is about alcoholics. Unfortunately, alcohol usage and heavy level of usage is becoming a big problem. So Alcoholics Anonymous found to be very effective for achieving alcohol abstinence. Alcoholics Anonymous, the worldwide fellowship of sobriety seekers, is one of the most effective paths to abstinence. according to a comprehensive analysis conducted by a Stanford School of Medicine researcher and its collaborators. After evaluating 35 studies involving the work of 145 scientists and the outcomes of more than 10,000 people, they decided that it was nearly always found to be more effective than psychotherapy in achieving abstinence. Most studies showed that Alcoholics Anonymous participations lowered healthcare costs, and Alcoholics Anonymous works because it's based on social interaction, Humphreys said, noting that members give one another emotional support as well as practical tips to refrain from drinking. If you want to change your behavior, find some other people who are trying to make the same change. So this review has been published on March 11 in Cochrane database of systematic review, and it requires that authors to undertake a rigorous process, ensures the studies represented in summaries are high quality, and the review of evidence is unbiased. So Cochrane reviews is one of the gold standards in medicine for integration of all the research about a particular intervention. And that's why Keith Humphreys, professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences, and with the other co-authors who are researchers from Harvard Medical School and a researcher from European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction. Though well known, Alcoholics Anonymous faces skepticism, although Alcoholics Anonymous is well known and used by millions around the world. Mental health professionals are sometimes skeptical of its effectiveness, Humphrey said. Psychologists and psychiatrists trained to provide cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational enhancement therapy to treat patients with alcohol use disorder. This can have a hard time admitting that the lay people who run Alcoholics Anonymous groups do a better job of keeping people on the wagon. Early in his career, Humphrey said he dismissed Alcoholics Anonymous, thinking, how dare these people do things that I have all these degrees to do? Humphreys noted that counseling can be designed to facilitate engagement with Alcoholics Anonymous, what he described as an extended warm handoff into the fellowship. For the review article, Humphreys and his colleagues evaluated both Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12-step facilitation counseling. Alcoholics Anonymous began in 1935 when two men in Akron, Ohio were searching for a way to stay sober. They found it by forming a support group. They later developed the 12 steps, the first being accepting one's inability to control drinking, the last helping others sustain sobriety by becoming a sponsor of a new member. The AA model, Alcoholics Anonymous model, open to all and free, has spread around the globe and now boasts over 2 million members in 180 nations and more than 118,000 groups. Although the fellowship has been around for more than 8 decades, researchers have only recently developed good methods to randomize trial participants and measure its effectiveness, Humphrey said. For the Cochrane review, the researchers found 57 studies on Alcoholics Anonymous. Of those, 35 passed the rigorous criteria for quality. The studies used various methods to measure Alcoholics Anonymous' effectiveness on alcohol use disorder. The length of time participants abstained from alcohol, the amount they reduced their drinking, if they continued drinking, the consequences of their drinking, and healthcare costs. So Alcoholics Anonymous shines. Most of the studies that measured abstinence found Alcoholics Anonymous was significantly better than other interventions or no intervention. In one study, it was found to be 60% more effective. None of the studies found Alcoholics Anonymous to be less effective. In the studies that measured outcomes other than complete abstinence, Alcoholics Anonymous was found to be at least as effective. For the studies that considered costs, most showed significant savings associated with Alcoholics Anonymous participation. One found that Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step facilitation counseling reduced mental health costs by $10,000 per person. The researchers looked only at studies of Alcoholics Anonymous. They excluded Narcotics Anonymous, an organization focused on addiction to other substances. While it was beyond the scope of their studies, Humphreys said that the Alcoholics Anonymous review is certainly suggestive that these methods for people who use heroin or cocaine may work as well. Humphreys noted that the findings were consistent whether the study participants were young, elderly, male, female, veterans, or civilians. The studies in the review were in actually 5 different countries. It absolutely showed that it does work. So he added that he feels validated in giving advice to so many patients to try Alcoholics Anonymous. That was really good advice, and that continues to be good advice, he said. We thank Stanford Medicine for providing this news to Ntr TV. Third news is about climate change, ladies and gentlemen. Climate change. Urbanization expected to cause an increase in groundwater organic carbon. More than half of the world's population faces a looming threat to the quality and availability of their drinking water because climate change and urbanization are expected to cause an increase in groundwater organic carbon, a new UNSW study has found. The research published in Nature Communications overnight examined the largest global data set of 9,404 published and unpublished groundwater dissolving organic carbon concentrations from aquifers in 32 countries across 6 continents. So this is a naturally occurring component of groundwater. But the higher its concentration, the more difficult and expensive it is to make groundwater drinkable. Only in Australia, groundwater is widely used as the main source of drinking water for many cities and towns. So lead author Dr. Lisa McDonough of the Connected Waters Initiative Research Center at UNSW said the study forecasted elevated DOC concentrations because of projected changes in temperature and rainfall due to climate change, as well as increased urbanization. They identified groundwater DOC concentration increases of up to 45%, largely because of increased temperatures in the wettest quarter of the year. For example, in a number of southeastern states in the United States, they predict increases in DOC in these locations could increase water costs for a family of 4 by up to $134 per year. Other areas such as eastern China, India, and parts of Africa already experience severe groundwater contamination issues. These may be further compounded, particularly in southeastern China, by groundwater DOC increases associated with large predicted increase in temperature in the wettest quarter of the year by 2050. Generally, we expect urbanization to increase groundwater DOC concentrations by up to 19% compared to agricultural or natural land use, likely as a result of contamination, or for example, through leaking septic and sewer systems. So Dr. Lisa McDonough, the lead author, the research, a collaboration between UNSW, the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organization, ANSTO, and Southern Cross University British Geological Survey and the University of Bradford, found 4 major contributing factors to groundwater DOC levels: climate, land use, inorganic chemistry, and aquifer age. Dr. McDonough said increased groundwater DOC, whether naturally occurring or due to contamination, also pose a threat to human health. Groundwater is Earth's largest source of fresh water and provides essential drinking water for more than 50% of the world's population, she said. But because most health impacts caused by DOC are related to the formation of byproducts of water treatment, chlorination, and depend on concentrations of other water chemical parameters, the World Health Organization and many countries, including Australia, do not regulate DOC concentrations in drinking water directly. Dr. McDonough said, while DOC is a naturally occurring key element of groundwater, it could combine with and transport potentially dangerous heavy metals, otherwise bound to rocks and sediment where groundwater occurs. This is a concern when, for example, more than 100,000 lifetime cancer cases only in the United States alone can be attributed to drinking water contaminants, she said. Water treatment costs to rise. Dr. McDonough said it was important to understand what caused high DOC concentrations in groundwater. An increase in groundwater DOC concentration impacts the ability and therefore cost to make groundwater drinkable, she said. For example, they projected a 16% increase in annual household water costs in some parts of the world, including the United States, because of rising water treatment costs, due to the need to implement additional water treatment measures to remove increased DOC concentrations. The decrease in groundwater quality and substantial increase in water treatment costs will also compound existing constraints on groundwater resources, including availability. Wet versus arid climates, Dr. McDonough said the impacts on groundwater DOC levels from climate change and urbanization, while likely to occur globally, differed by geography and climate. Their research found that in arid climates, groundwater duck concentrations increase with higher rainfall because microbes can better break down organic matter such as leaves under warm and increasingly wet conditions, she said. Increased temperatures in arid environments, however, reduce groundwater duck concentrations because when conditions are too hot and dry, vegetation and organic matter sources are limited. By contrast, increased rain in warm and wet environments decrease groundwater duck concentrations because heavy rainfall dilutes the duck in groundwater. So therefore, I think their next step is to investigate how the character of duck changes when you have different aquifer minerals, because some types of organic matter can stick to certain mineral surfaces and ultimately reduce the type of organic matter remaining in the water. So this will help provide guidance on the most suitable water treatment options in areas where duck concentrations are expected to increase. Thank you very much to University of New South Wales for this work.
The world's population almost quadrupled in the last century, but demand for water grew at double that rate. Over the next 50 years, more people and changing lifestyles will need yet another 55% more water. Farmers will use almost 3/4 of it. Because rising populations need more food, some 70% more. How will we balance demand for water while producing the food, goods, and power needed for the future? Farmers will have to compete with households, manufacturing, and the power sector for scarce water supplies, raising food security concerns unless farmers grow more crop per drop. By 2050, almost 4 billion people will live in river basins, drawing out an unsustainable amount of water. In South Asia and the Middle East, much of China, and parts of Africa, more people using more water means there won't be enough for everyone. And what they do have will be increasingly polluted. More than 2 billion people in urban and rural areas of poor and middle-income countries didn't have access to decent sanitation in 1990. That figure drops to about 1.4 billion in 2050, still too high. In 1990, 1.2 billion people living in poor and middle-income countries didn't have access to treated water. By 2050, this figure will drop to under 300 million, though their water is still not always safe to drink. In India, China, and much of Africa, increased agricultural runoff from farm animals, fertilizers, and other chemicals will increase water pollution. More people living in larger cities will further strain inadequate sanitation systems. 3 times as much polluted wastewater will flow into rivers and lakes, making people sick and killing fish, plants, and animals. That's bad news for oceans, too. Pollution will pour from rivers into the Atlantic, the Indian, and the Pacific, causing algae blooms and creating dead zones. The solution? People should pay for the water they use, and they should pay to clean the water they pollute. That would discourage waste and cut down pollution. More money is needed for infrastructure and innovation to go along with more recycling, the reuse of water, and natural ecosystems.
Our fourth news is about improving the quality and availability of critical birth and death data provided by University of Melbourne. University of Melbourne researchers have identified and implemented the key interventions and tools that countries can and should use to improve the quality and availability of critical birth and death data and ultimately improve health outcomes. This was published in BMC Medicine. It is the first civil registration and vital statistics collection to report on experience in implementing technical interventions over the first 4 years of the Bloomberg Data for Health initiative. Across the world, about 40 to 50% of all deaths are unrecorded, and millions of deaths do not have a documented cause. Over 4 years, University of Melbourne researchers have worked with low and middle income countries through the Bloomberg Data for Health initiative to help them improve the collection of birth and death data. This increases understanding about the leading causes of premature death and can be used to inform public health policy and preventive action. People live longer if they benefit from informed, targeted public health action and policies. And that means we need to know reliably what people are dying from, said University of Melbourne professor Alan Lopez, report co-author and expert on the global burden of disease. As part of the initiative, researchers have conducted the first ever multi-country assessment of medical certification improvement strategies designed to improve the accuracy of diagnosis by doctors in hospitals. Accurate and timely completion of the medical certificate of cause of a death should be a relatively straightforward procedure for physicians, but researchers say mistakes are common. Researchers found a reduction in incorrectly completed certificates of between 28% and 43% is possible, depending on the training the trainer, direct training of the physician, or online training. The results indicate that a variety of training strategies can produce benefits in the quality of certification, but further improvements are possible. Other recommendations include using automated verbal autopsy method, using a digital tablet and a 20-minute questionnaire. Interviewers ask friends and family about the signs and symptoms present before the person died. These results reported in the journal demonstrate this simple, cost-effective data collection method can produce reliable cause of death information for community deaths, which little was previously known. Researchers are now calling for parallel investments in critical health information systems to accelerate progress built on lessons learned. Knowing how many people are born each year, how many are dying, and from what causes is vital to tackling public health problems, ongoing population planning, and developing policies. So this research provides evidence-based interventions that countries can use to strengthen vital statistic systems and improve their record keeping. Further funding and support are needed to enable low and middle-income countries to implement these recommendations, improve global health data, and ultimately health outcomes. So, Deirdre McLaughlin, the co-author and University of Melbourne Associate Professor, this BMC medicine collection was led by the Global Burden of the Disease Group at the Melbourne School of Population and Global Health, University of Melbourne, Australia. It draws upon experiences of countries involved in the Data for Health initiative, supported by Bloomberg Philanthropies and the Australian Department of Foreign Trade Affairs and Trade. We want to thank University of Melbourne for this great work. Our final news is about how to actually look into different ways of the data that we talked about. Because at the end, the authenticity of data is so important from this data you have heard. And that's why we need to also look into the quality of the authenticity of the data and make sure this data, which is available for all of us, is authentic. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome all of you to make sure to watch World Health News carefully and always be aware of all the possible wrong data. And that's why this fifth news is about routine childhood vaccination linked to long-term schooling attainment among adults in India. Vaccines have reduced the global burden of disease by preventing an estimated 2 to 3 million deaths worldwide each year. Only in India, the reduction in annual under 5 deaths from 3.4 to 1.2 million between 1990 and 2015 was largely due to expansions in coverage of routine childhood vaccination. Vaccines have been linked to increased economic productivity as well as improved cognition, growth, and schooling among children. While the long-term health benefits of vaccination are well known, little evidence exists on the link between routine childhood vaccination and long-term schooling attainment among adults in low and middle-income countries. In this study, ladies and gentlemen, researchers analyzed levels of schooling attainment in years among adults born during or after the implementation of India's Universal Immunization Program, UIP, intervention compared to adults born before the implementation control. District level data from the rollout of India's UIP between 1985 and 1990 was matched to schooling data from the National Family Health Survey of India. 2015 to 2016, a cross-sectional survey that collects information on the health and family welfare indicators. The study included almost 110,000 non-migrant individuals who were born within 5 years of UIP rollout, 1980 to 1995. They were compared schooling attainment of individuals who were born after the introduction of UIP with that of those who were similar. So they lived in the same household or community but were born just before the UIP. Arindam Nandi, the study author and CDDEP senior fellow, utilizing fixed effects linear regression models adjusted for socioeconomic and demographic factors, community level infrastructure amenities, and access to healthcare, the study found that India's UIP was associated with 0.2 to 0.3 additional schooling rates among adults. Specifically in household, village or city ward, district and state fixed effects analysis, adults born during or after UIP rollout attained 0.18, 0.23, 0.29, and 0.25 additional schooling grades, respectively, compared to adults born before UIP rollout. And all results were statistically significant. In subgroup analysis, the link between UIP implementation and schooling attainment was significant among women, unmarried women, members of households in rural and urban areas, general castes and other backward classes, and individuals in the top 2 wealth quantiles. Overall, results indicate that routine childhood vaccination is associated with improved schooling attainment among adults in India. This adds to the literature on the long-term non-health benefits of vaccines. So this study is an important addition to a small but growing literature on the broader cognitive and schooling benefits of routine childhood vaccines in low and middle-income countries. The findings reinforce the need for universal vaccination coverage among children.
Hi, I'm Trent, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about immunisation. So you've talked to your parents and guardians and you've decided you need an injection. So we all know vaccines are important, but we're today to explain what happens the day at school when the nurses and immunisation team arrive. There are some common mistaken beliefs about injections, and we'd like to set your mind at ease and answer a few questions. Let's have a talk to a few of the kids and see what they think.
Is it true getting a jab can hurt a little?
So how big is the needle?
It's just a little needle and it does sting just a little bit as it pierces the skin. We try to be as gentle as we can and as quick as possible.
So what would be some good advice before having an injection?
Eat breakfast before coming to school so you don't get dizzy, and make sure you drink plenty of water.
Just relax, try and relax your arm, don't clench your fist, and wriggling your toes really helps.
Count backwards from 10, but above all, if you're worried, just come and talk to us.
So let's go behind the scenes to the nurses and find out what sort of questions they might ask you.
Can you just give me your full name?
Do you have any allergies to any drugs, pills or medicines?
Are you well today? After your jab, you'll be asked to sit on the floor for 15 minutes. This is just to make sure that you don't have a reaction, which very rarely happens.
I didn't even know she'd done it.
It was really quick. The nurse was really nice.
So there you have it. You've learned all there is to know about getting an injection. We hope we've set your mind at ease.
I want to thank you all for listening to World Health News. This is Dr. Salai. Always stay tuned, and I'm really thrilled to be sharing very interesting news around the world on health. Take care and all the best.